Hello everyone, and welcome to this video, which is in our Great Engine Game series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler, and we are going to take a look at an absolutely stunning Fisher-Random Chess 960 game played between Stockfish and Leela 0 in the TCEC Season 24 FRC 6 Final. It features probably the most beautiful bit of Chess 960 opening play from Leela that I've ever seen. Barely understood it, but it was absolutely fantastic. So let's have a look how that went. So the book was d4, that was the first move, and then knight cd6, and here is where the book ended. Now actually, this first move is quite significant because in general, my one of my ground rules for Chess 960 is that early knight moves are poor choices, simply because the structures that you're going to set up in Chess 960 are often quite unclear. I mean, the pieces are in completely different places. You're going to be moving pawns in different places. It's much better to wait with your short range pieces to see where they should go rather than commit them early. And for black, obviously the simplest move would be to play d5. When I ran Stockfish against Dragon, or rather Dragon against Stockfish, Stockfish was coming up with b5 and f5, very similar to what Leela does in the game in actual fact, but without a knight on d6, gumming up the works really. So in principle this is a poor first move, but that's the idea of the book. Unbalance the position, give white an advantage, put the pressure on black. So Stockfish played a couple of very sensible pawn moves now. Played the move b3, threatening to play c2 to c4, and obviously this is gaining central space, also kind of targeting this knight on d6, and of course activating the bishops. So the bishop on a1 gets opened, and bishop on b1 will get opened after c4. I mean, it's actually a slightly odd little structure there that you've really got to play b3 and c4 to activate both bishops. If you play b3 and then c3, then, well, the bishop on b1 is active, but the bishop on a1 is passive. So Leela plays, very, very, very aggressively here, and plays the move b5. And you're stopping c4, and essentially what you're trying to do, you're trying to keep those white bishops under wraps. So f3 was played, and then Leela, without fear, played the move f5, stopping white from playing the move e2 to e4. Now, I mean, the drawback to these moves is that there are some quite tempting squares on c5 and e5 for white knights now. And, the fact that you've got a knight on d6 here sort of stops you from playing d6 to stop them. So, that's kind of the bad thing about having the knight on d6. But black's managed to stop white from gaining too much space in the opening, still keeping this bishop on b1 under wraps. And when you play f5, it actually opens the line for the queen. So the queen can get out, and that means that black can castle kingside. By the same token, f3 from white, enabled the white queen to get active, and enabled white to castle kingside. So knight cd3 was played. Yeah, just a good natural move, just aiming at these two squares. And now actually, kind of a Leela special really, because when I played my matches, and it was on my big hardware, so Dragon against Stockfish, so 94 threads. Both engines were trying to get the queens out quite early. So Dragon played the move queen e6 in this position, and Stockfish was tending to go for stuff like queen f7 to h5, but the basic idea was get the queen out and then castle kingside. Leela's going to get the queen out, but it's going to do it in a way, way riskier method. So knight f6 played, queen f2, and now this is where it really just starts getting quite amazing from Leela. Stockfish played the very sensible e6, castles queen f7 here, and just aiming to castle kingside on the next move. All very sensible. What Leela did now was start playing all over the board, and played the move a5. By the way, the fact that blacks played b5 and f5 really reminded me of a very famous game by Larsen. I think it's against Spassky, where Larsen started off with the birds opening f4 and followed up a little bit later with b4. That's here Leela's doing pretty much the same thing in a Fischer random position. So this move a5 is a really nice move. First of all, what it's doing, black's actually activating the dark square bishop on the side. So a7 is going to be the move, and it's not a bad square for the bishop because obviously we're attacking the d4 pawn. And the queen beyond it, and of course if the king castles, then the king will be beyond it. So there's some general pressure. It's not like you've got a lot of combined pressure against that d pawn, but it's definitely a decent square. The other thing about a5 is that, as you're going to see, black gets the possibility to go b4. And this is Leela really trying to get a grip and to clamp down on these bishops. When you play b4, what Leela can follow up with is to go knight b5, knight d5, and aim for this c3 square. And if I manage to get a knight on c3, well, I mean, this bishop on b1 is never going to move. We've seen that Stockfish, had problems from time to time with corner bishops. Well, looks like a bishop on b1 is going to cause a problem here as well. So a5 castles, bishop a7, so activating the bishop there, e3, and now another great move, g5. So yeah, it feels like a Dutch, doesn't it? Some sort of weird Leningrad Dutch where the bishop's on a7. But I mean, it's a great move, g5. First of all, what does g5 do? It frees the queen, actually. So, the queen can be freed on g7, g6, and castle kingside can happen. So, it's a developing move. What it's also doing, it's introducing the threat of g4. And, you suddenly see how Leela's managing to connect up its pieces. And, of course, if the f-pawn goes, a knight can jump into e4. So there's quite a lot of that. But there's actually an even better amazing idea, and that was one that I just hadn't spotted at all. And around here it all starts getting pretty amazing. It's already quite exceptional what Leela's doing, playing on both sides of the board in an inferior position, whilst white seems to have so many possibilities. But what Leela comes up with next is really amazing. So knight e5 was played by Stockfish, and this is very, very sensible. Obviously, you're freeing the other d3 square for the knight. It can come into c5, which looks very tempting. And also with knight e5, you're supporting the move c4. So we're opening up the line of the bishop against the pawn on f5, and if we get in c4, well, this is going to get really dangerous. If I get into c5, this knight's being forced to move away. The f5 pawn's going to be weak, weakening black's control on e4. Black hasn't castled yet. There's a lot of things that could go wrong there. Now, this is quite interesting. In a number of games, I was running Stockfish also against Komodo MCTS, and it played g4 in quite a few games. But here we're playing c4. Obviously, if you take twice on c4, then f5 is hanging here, and after g takes f3, knight takes f3. We've got a lot of power building up against the king here, and obviously these two bishops now are looking good. We've got c5, we've got d5. There's a lot going on here for white. But Leela's move was to play f4, and this really shocked me because after all, it's all been about light squares. Well, that's what it's felt like to me. Two knights attacking e4, a pawn on f5, a pawn on b5 stopping c4, and possibility of g4. But here Leela suddenly switches to clamping down on the dark squares, and it's again it's all about can we just bury these two bishops. So e takes f4 was played by Stockfish here. Many other lines, but e takes f4 was played in the game, and then here was the really amazing follow-up, something which is never going to occur to me ever, because Leela played the move b4. So you're just sacrificing that pawn on the on the king side like that, whilst your king is weak. Of course, in Fischer Random Chess 960, you always have the feeling that, oh my goodness, this king is so weak, it's on f8. But obviously, it's able to get out of trouble. Well, maybe casting queenside might be casting into trouble, but at a moment's notice, really. So that's one of the hard things for humans to evaluate for Fischer Random, that the king is actually very mobile still. But b4. What does f4 e takes f4 achieved? Well, actually, it's given black this d5 square for the knight, and of course, once this knight is invulnerable on d5, it can help clap down on some dark squares. And so b4, knight d5 to c3. This is going to kill the dark squared bishop and kill the light squared bishop, and that's what Leela's got going for, basically. Sacrifice the pawn on the king side to give its knight an invulnerable central square, and then it's linking it up with its play on the queen side. And of course, if you get a knight on c3, blocking out the bishop on a1, then this bishop suddenly becomes much more powerful. The d4 pawn is actually going to get a little bit weak there. So it's amazing. I'm just in absolute awe of what's happening there, because to play a pawn sacrifice like that on the king side, and then just to play a quiet positional move afterwards on the queen side, it's incredible. So knight d3 and knight d5. And again, it's quite incredible. This positional sacrifice on the king side, and then you're just playing on the queen side. But it's Leela's plan here, attacking the pawn on d4, and actually this knight is going to come to c3. And very importantly, by moving this knight away to b5, you've now got the threat of d6, chasing away this knight on e5. So all of a sudden, White's pieces are not quite as stable as they might appear. But the position is going to start getting pretty amazing here. So one idea that here Stockfish played knight c5. Another idea that was much played in my engine games. This was at engine games, both between Stockfish and Komodo, MCTS I think, and Stockfish and Leela. And f takes g5 was also played, and now knight d5 played, not taking that pawn back, really just aiming for c3. So knight dc3 is threatened, followed by bishop takes d4, and then we get knight c5 d6, knight e d7 check, king e8, queen e2. Very typical tactic here. So attacking this knight on b5, and then Leela was playing queen takes g5. And after queen takes b5, for example, then d takes c5, knight e5 checks c6, and this is obviously a pretty bizarre position. But the key factor in this position, and the reason it's so hard to evaluate, is that you've got to deal with buried bishops on both sides there. But somehow the black bishops are just a little bit better, because we've got c takes d4, which is possible, and also bishop b8. This dark square bishop is still mobile, whereas the two white bishops are really out of play. And you can start with something like knight takes c6, but we take king f7, and then white's really struggling to do anything. f4, queen g6. Leela just offering the exchange of queens, because these bishops are completely tied out. We've got c takes d4, we've got knight e3 as ideas, queen b7, queen b6 here, the engines were agreeing a draw in this position, simply because it sort of feels like black's just actually doing really well in this position. And you exchange everything off, the knight comes to c3, and this bishop on b1 is completely dead. So quite amazing ideas, and some very difficult positional factors to weigh up all the time. Stockfish played knight c5 in the game, and Leela went d6, and now queen e2. We've seen this one before. So I guess kind of linking up. Because these knights are attacking all sorts of light squares. So linking up the white queen with some light squares is a very good idea. Obviously, we're linking up with e6. We're attacking the knight on b5 here. And And yeah, this is a very interesting moment again. Leela took on e5 here. Actually, Dragon MCTS got a little bit distracted by knight c3. Sometimes it was taking on e5, sometimes playing knight c3. And the positions were just crazy. Let me just show you just one game there. Bishop takes c3, bc. So what does knight c3 achieve? I mean, it's really buried this bishop on b1 for a long time. So basically, white's playing a piece down now, and it's got two knights on prise. F takes g5, knight d5, knight e d7, king f7, knight e6. And yeah, what is white's idea? Well, if rook takes d7, we're just going f4 here. And we've just got f5 and queen h5, and this is really, really dangerous. Although, yeah, you know, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of two pieces in a way, because this bishop is so blocked. The big problem for black is that, you know, trying to run to the queen side, well, it's very difficult with a knight on e6. And secondly, the queen's always going to be there as well to attack you. So, yeah, very hard for black to get free. So, Leela, Stockfish, Dragon, all of these engines were playing the move c5. So we're going to break out. f4 takes on d4, king h1, knight e3, and you know, this is just totally crazy. f5. So queen h5 is a huge threat here. So king e8 played just to meet queen h5 with queen f7, and here knight df8. I've just never seen anything like this. And well, white's sort of looking for stuff like queen b5 check here. So queen f8 played, takes, bishop g2, king g1, rook f8. And yeah, I mean, yeah, Komodo Dragon, Leela played this position a number of times against Stockfish. I think Leela held one draw, but mostly Stockfish was managing to break through. But I mean, you know, I just can't tell you what should be happening in this position. I can't really tell whether this should be best. But the next move is well worth seeing. f6, king d7, and then rook f5, just putting just the rook completely on prise. But you know, obviously you're hoping that if the knight takes, then you get your queen in, and you're ready to invade. Or you've also got stuff like queen b5 check as well. You know, so well, of course, you know, nobody took it. e5 was played, and the king came to e6. It's just absolutely bananas positions. But if Stockfish was playing white, it was getting out of there. Of course, you know, the one thing that is kind of important here is that you know, this bishop is not buried forever. We might be able to get it out with a3, b4, and bishop a2. So that's the one extra factor. I think if the black pawn was on a3, it might be a different story. So that was absolutely bananas. But Leela didn't get distracted by that. Leela just took on e5. And then queen takes b5. That's quite important. If you go f takes c5, I've got this move knight d4, and yeah, we're undermining the support of the knight on c5 there. So queen takes b5, picking up a piece, and then the move g4. So not at all leaving this pawn on prise to two pawns, not taking back anything at all. Suddenly again, we're switching to light squares, g4. So we've done all the dark square stuff, trying to shut in these bishops, done all our stuff on the queen side. Now we're switching back to the king side, and again, linking up these bishops with the queens. I mean, when you see what Leela has done to get all of its pieces active, compared to, you know, what Stockfish has managed, I mean, it's absolutely incredible. So f takes c5, g takes f3. And yeah, here white's got to start being careful now. If you go rook f2, we go knight g4, and yeah, this is really, really dangerous. You know, knight d7 we just take, and go knight f2, and obviously we've got, you know, queen takes g2 coming in here. If you just try and block with g3, we go knight g4 here. And again, check, we just take, and queen g5. And yeah, I mean, queen e3 is a really dangerous threat here. And, you know, these two bishops, you know, you'd want this bishop on c1 covering stuff, but they're completely useless. And if you go rook f2, which was the engine's best move to deal with that threat of e3, we just go h5 and h4, and we're coming in. You know, just amazing play, really. Just absolutely incredible. So Stockfish, of course, played the best move, which was to cover with rook d2. We keep the rook looking at this pawn also on the open f-file, and the rook is covering here. And yeah, you can't go queen g5 for the moment, because knight e6 check, of course, would fork rather painfully. So bishop c5 from Leela, and yeah, again, you've got to be very careful with white, because you might think, oh well, I'll just take that one back, and I've got the two bishops and all that. But yeah, you've got two useless bishops in actual fact, and queen g5 very strong. This knight's coming into e4 or to g4. We've got queen e3, very, very dangerous. So yeah, rook df2, knight g4. Rook takes f3, takes, king g7, and yeah, again, you sort of feel two bishops, some pawns, open black king, but the key thing is these guys are completely useless, and we've got moves like queen c1 coming in, and also rook f8 just to open stuff up. Basically, white's just completely lost here. So yeah, no engine was managing to hold this as white. So e takes f6, you have to get rid of that knight. And now another great move, queen d5. What are we threatening? Well, we're threatening bishop takes d4. So just this little tactic, hitting the queen on b5 is going to keep Leela afloat there. And f takes e7, king takes e7. The king comes into the center. But yeah, we've got pins. You can't take on c5 because of queen takes d2. Queen d3 is played. You've got to get the queen out of danger. And now bishop d6. There was some amazing stuff that happened here again. I mean, I have to show you one game between Dragon and Stockfish here, because it was simply amazing. Rook e1 check, king f7, queen d3 was played. Queen g5, rook f2, rook e8. And well, just actually what happened here was that Stockfish just played this move rook e3. It wasn't forced at all, but just gave away the piece, and then just sort of basically Stockfish and Dragon, or Dragon and Stockfish, just agreed a draw in this position, like positional draw. White's got an extra piece, but these bishops are completely stuck. We've got lovely complete control here. Oops, and black plays h5 and h4. I mean, to be honest, I don't understand why black isn't just winning here, but bishop c1, queen g4, bishop f4, rook 8 e3, and then c4 takes bishop d3, and a draw was agreed in my engine games. I just thought leave that there. Don't look any further. That's just one of the most spectacular positions to agree a draw in that I've ever seen. So I think you just get the idea of just how much compensation black has because of those trapped bishops on b1 and a1, and the fact that they're trapped in there, that's all due to Leela's play. This b5, a5, b4, knight b5, pawn sacrifice with f4 on the king side. It's simply amazing. So bishop d6 played, rook f3, rook df8. So white's actually got two extra pawns here, but somehow you look at black's pieces and it's it's simply majestic, right? I mean, amazing bishops here, queen beautifully placed, open file for the rooks, and the king's open. But yeah, if you've only got major pieces and the king's heading towards the queen side, there's absolutely no danger at all. So Stockfish, well, took the opportunity to play c4, b takes c3, bishop c3. So the bishops are a little bit active, although dark squared bishop is still blocked behind there. And of course, Leela now takes off. So white's got still an extra pawn, but well, yeah, black's still very, very active here. Rook g8 check, and this king on g1 is in a bit of difficulty. So rook f2, bishop c6. Bishop d3 played, a4, takes check, d5, opening up the line, attacking the bishop. Is this dangerous? No, we've got a check here. Takes, bishop g2, bishop b3, and then c6. And yeah, I mean, we've learned from engine games that these sort of positions, yeah, white's a pawn up, but the engines are always going to draw these. And king g1, h5, the game was over quite soon. Bishop e1, bishop a3, the engine's just assessing this as a draw. Bishop d6, bishop e7, h4, king d7, and a draw was agreed. In the human game, you'd carry on for quite a few more moves. For engines, this was just dead equal. So there we are. I mean, what an amazing game. And it really is a good example of what I've often said is that the gap between human players and engines is way greater at chess 960 Fischer random than it is at normal chess, and well, obviously at normal chess the gaps are pretty big. But I mean, for normal chess, often the concepts engines come up with, you're not surprised at all. It's just that they make them work in sometimes quite amazing ways. But what Leela's coming up with here is just total space age chess, really. I mean. Just run through the moves again, but b5 and f5 to clamp down, that's all quite obvious. A5 already to go b4 afterwards is really a nice idea. But combining it on both sides like this, and then this move f4, and then not even capturing the pawn, but just carrying on with your positional play on the queen side, ignoring this whole thing here just to clamp down on the white bishops. It's amazing play. And I mean, the way that Leela sort of carried on, keeping on playing really aggressively all the way, and the amazing thing about it was swapping from all this dark square strategy, a5 b4 knight b5 f4, swapping to g4 back to the light squares, and somehow having arranged its pieces that it was just hugely active on both, whereas the white bishops were so passive. It's amazing play, really. Real classic Fischer random play, and I think real example of how rich Fischer random is, and how much it can add to compared to normal chess. So there we are. I hope you enjoyed that game. If you liked it, why not give a like, or subscribe to the channel. Subscriptions are always very, very welcome. Do take a look at my new book, which is called Re-Engineering the Chess Classics, and we've done lovely engine analysis like this and applied it to lots of classic games. If you saw the series that I did, Polishing the Classics, which is all about classic endgames, then I think you'll love this book. And I seriously think, obviously a little bit biased, but I do seriously think that it's really a fantastic piece of work, and shedding new light on loads of classic games, and not to and sympathetically as well. We try and really try and show which when mistakes are made, which ones are really plausible and why they might be why they're mistaken. But I think what we're really doing is showing how showing the engines are showing new strategies, brilliant ways of playing end games. In particular, we've got some absolutely gorgeous end games in there, and just think it sheds new light on chess completely. So do take a look at that. It's on the New in Chess website, and there's some quite a few nice sample pages in there as well. But otherwise, thanks very much for watching, and hope to see you at the next videos. Thanks for watching.